Welcome to Mission Driven Founders, where passion meets purpose. If you're dreaming of starting your own business, whether it's in beauty, wellness, or beyond, you're in the right place. We are going behind the scenes with inspiring entrepreneurs who are not just building brands, but driving real change. So hit subscribe, tap the bell for updates, and stick around. This conversation could be the spark that ignites your journey. Welcome back to part 2 of our reality check series with Kacie Schady, the founder of Love and Light Botanicals. In our first episode, we blew the lid off well washing. We talked about greenwashing, well washing, and today we're getting into the nitty gritty of how to actually build a business on your own terms. We are talking to the person who feels overwhelmed, the business owner who has a small budget, a big dream, and maybe feels like they don't fit the mold of a typical loud, aggressive entrepreneur. Kacie, welcome back. We're so excited for episode 2. Can't wait to hear all about your experience and everything that happens behind the scenes with entrepreneurs that are starting small by themselves but growing and building something so solid like you are.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to getting right into it, Wanda. Thanks for having me back.
Thanks. So let's get right into it. Kacie, when you start a business, everyone has advice for you. It can be so discouraging to feel like you're doing it wrong because you aren't following a traditional path or what everybody's doing. Have you stayed true to your authentic self? And what is your secret to not getting derailed by all the outside noise? Because there is a lot of outside noise.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when you're just getting started, I think you're naturally kind of working through so many factors by proving out new ideas, you're testing the market, trying to see what your customer responds to. So, there's already a lot of things that you might be questioning anyway, because you're truly in this process of working out the kinks. But at the same time, you're also getting a lot of inputs, and this organically kind of happens at that early stage of business. It's probably your potential customers, maybe other businesses in your network, or even if you have an advisory board, you're getting these ideas from tons of different inputs, and many of them are unsolicited, right? From all these interactions, and it would be overwhelming for almost anyone. It certainly was for me in the beginning. And the first thing that I kind of had to get really honest with myself about was, to your point, what was my own purposeful direction so that I could avoid falling into this cycle of questioning and overthinking everything, which is true to my nature. It's one of my fatal flaws. And I think I also had to get comfortable with this idea that not all paths look the same. I'm a self-funded solopreneur. I'm formulating products in-house in small batch. I don't have a marketing team, don't have a warehouse team, unless you count my husband, who lovingly fills all of our orders and does a fantastic job. But naturally, my journey is going to look very different. And the benefit here is that it allows me to be agile while staying crystal clear on that commitment to my customers, and those who resonate with my mission. So I'll share an example. I've had many people assume that contract manufacturing, this idea of outsourcing the product formulation, is like the proven, surefire way to truly scale a consumer product goods brand. But for me, manufacturing is actually never something I wanted to outsource. And when I tell people that, they look at me a little sideways, but that's because I can see a path of growth where I scale the lab alongside the product growth side of the business. And that will allow me to eventually become a resource and an incubator and help enable other entrepreneurs who share my passion and want to disrupt the conventional beauty industry. So that's actually a highly valuable path to grow the brand that I want to build, but it's very different from the traditional path to scale. And so I think that's where I continue to go back to anchoring my actions into why I started. And I didn't launch this brand with a singular focus on growth. It was so much more than that. I had this firsthand experience of what it felt like to have sensitive skin and not be able to trust or navigate this conventional beauty industry with all the fear based marketing. And I knew how deeply the insecurities that you feel about your skin can also affect how you feel outwardly, and the damage that the anti-aging message can have on our emotional well-being. So that mission is really specific, and it's about disrupting an industry and creating positive change. So there are areas of the business that I definitely shouldn't compromise, and that's going to enable me to see this vision through.
I just love that you make your own products in your own lab and you are hands on in every detail, every aspect of the production, sourcing the ingredients, manufacturing them, packaging them. I mean, you are so in control of the quality and of just everything that you're doing. It's really hard. It's not for everyone. Some entrepreneurs just can't do it. Some entrepreneurs, because some entrepreneurs have other strengths, and maybe manufacturing is not, so they don't really have to maybe they can use a third party manufacturer. But I love that you do this because you are so involved in your mission. Like you dove right into the manufacturing, the formulation, and once you scale, of course you're going to need help, but you're going to know exactly what to expect from each professional that you put in your company because you are doing it all. So when you have that experience, when you come from experience, you might even get people to do like the marketing or the sales better than you do today, but you know exactly what customer you have, what their needs are, and you've been talking to them face to face. So that experience that you're gaining by being hands on in every area, it's not actually, some people say, oh, but you can't scale if you do everything. You can if you have a plan. And you are one of the most organized people I know. I know you have a plan, a 1 year, 5 year, 10 year plan, 20 year plan. And I love where you're going and I love your strategy. So kudos to you, Miss Kacie. I love it. And now let's talk about the introvert superpower because there are so many entrepreneurs out there like you are introverts, right? And I love this about you. You are a self described hardcore introvert, yet you've successfully socialized and promoted your brand without an expensive marketing firm. So for the introverts watching who are terrified of putting themselves out there, how do you survive and even thrive at in-person events? Because you've been so successful at your in-person events. People love you, they love your products, and you're an introvert. So that must be hard for you. Tell us how you do it.
It's yeah, a hardcore introvert might actually be an understatement when describing me, but it's true. I am a classic behind the scenes girl through to the core. But it's nuanced the way that my introversion shows up, and I think the connections that I make with customers that I'm solving a problem for, that is genuinely one of my favorite parts of this journey and being an entrepreneur. And so I think um, I've found a piece to kind of love and latch onto that helps me overcome some of those, introverted tendencies. But yes, you're right. The thing that's ironic is that I have leaned into in-person events as one of my core growth strategies. So even though showing up for a crowd is more of a personal challenge for me because it really depletes my energy quickly when I'm in that sort of highly social environment, I'm also able to be intentional about creating space so that I can restore either before or after the event. And for me, it's all about balancing that energy because I know I love the one on one. I just need to refill my energy bucket at times. Luckily, I get to spend a lot of quiet time in the lab replenishing and creating new things. So that's a reset for my soul. But I
I
think the other thing that I've also learned is to sort of play to my strengths in these environments. And because I'm so good at one on one, I take an approach to these big in person events as like a series of all of those one on one moments, which makes it a lot less overwhelming. And then my approach is not this like hard pressure sale. I'm not going to reel people in. It's that feels kind of gimmicky to me. And honestly, I don't respond super positively when I'm a shopper. So I focus on curating this environment that's a calm, welcoming space. And I work to draw people in naturally. And for me, that quality over quantity wins time after time.
I agree completely. And I think so many people appreciate the fact that you're not just selling, selling, selling. You're connecting, you're understanding what the problem is with that person's skin. And, at the end of these events, I don't know about you, but I feel like at the end of every event, I made new friends. Like, oh, I made new friends and I'm calling everybody my friend and we're connecting later. We're talking about something that's completely random, not about the products that were being sold. And then it happens naturally. The connection, the friendship, the sale is really, at the end of the day, not even the most important part. But of course, it's beautiful that you end up selling your products. People love your products because some products, once you try them, you don't want to change. You don't want to try anything else because they're great. I mean, I'm a user of your product and I buy them, every time that I need to replenish. And that's how I think we connected, because I connected with your values, with your mission. And then I started, we tested your products, of course, for the CMB certification. But beyond that, they are very effective products. So it just combines everything that's good: the friendship, the alignment, the mission, and the high quality products. I really truly love that. And
I
I
love
keep saying I love that. Everybody tells me, you keep saying I love that. I said, well, I do. So
it.
um,
Brings me so much joy to know that I'm a part of your everyday self-care moments in a small way.
you definitely are, Kacie. And my daughter too, who's 24, she loves your products. So strategic scaling on a budget. Here's a big one. And we're going to talk money and resources. And you just cannot do everything at once when you're starting small. You have big dreams. You want to do this event and that event. You want to do a million things. So, how do you decide what is critical today and what stays on the later list? What is your framework for prioritization across weeks, months, or even years? Because we have all the ideas, we know what we want to do, but our budget doesn't allow us to do it all, right? All at once. So how do you prioritize that?
Yeah, absolutely. I think this question kind of picks at something a lot of, self-funded solopreneurs probably struggle with, because this pressure to do everything and do it fast is bearing down upon us. There's a narrative with, especially how quick technology is really changing the landscape of our lives, that if you don't move fast enough, you'll get left behind. And that's a genuinely overwhelming thing for a small brand. But I think my philosophy is, you know, give myself permission to say not yet, right? Instead of saying no, because there's a laundry list of ideas that I'm excited about. I keep it and I continue to reference it, but there are things that I want to invest in that I may not have the time or the resources to do right now, but I know they'll be important at some point in my journey. And so by doing that, it lets me build sort of a long-term vision of goals and milestones and things that I can work towards without feeling like I have to do it all now and getting into that like overwhelmed cycle. And then I always go back to the framework for decision making with the customers that I already have. You said it earlier, it is really hard to get someone to change their skincare routine. And once they have trusted me and supported me and kind of come along on this journey, my goal is to build a really strong community around that. And so I first focus on activities that will deepen that customer relationship so that I can continue to build that solid foundation of repeat customers, happy customers. They can support the business to keep growing. And then I can work towards some of those bigger ideas that are in the sort of not yet bucket. So yeah, in the first couple of years, it meant saying no to things like, large scale wholesale programs or maybe like a large advertising budget because they weren't in the cards, they weren't the priority. And you have to be smart when you have these limited resources.
And I feel like you're very grounded, because a lot of people go into debt, and big debt, right? Because they feel like they need to be at this major trade show, or they have to be at this other event, or they have to be at this store, this chain that we know, without mentioning names of, big store big chains, we know that a lot of brands that were good products went down just because they really were not ready to be in a certain chain, and that cost them their business,
Yep.
because you have to put so much money into it. It's not just the product. And then if it doesn't sell, you lose your inventory. You have all this, money that you have to pay back to the store. And I mean, there's a whole bunch of things that happen when adventure into a big store. And a lot of brands that I've worked with in the past, and some of them they just wanted to be there. They wanted to be competitive. They took out loans. They refinanced their homes to be in that retailer, and that retailer was like, you didn't sell in this period of time. We're giving back all your inventory and you have to pay us back. And then they're they have all this, debt that they don't know what to do with it, and their business goes down. They go bankrupt. So you are very well, like, rounded with, your money and your expectations around, investments, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. Because tell us about this pressure. There's so many brands that feel pressured, and they need to grow. They need feel like they need to grow fast, or they're out of the market. And I agree with you. Like, slowly and steady really wins the race, especially when it comes to all this budgeting. So if you can tell us more about that, go deeper, a little deeper.
Yeah, for sure. So I think one thing that you said around the risk of letting your customers down, right? If you put all your eggs into this basket of trying to drive towards scaling fast, and you have to get into whatever the retail store is, you're putting a lot on the line. And not only are you putting your customer that's put their trust in you on the line, you're potentially letting them down, but you're putting your business at risk, right? And so that that stuck with me, and that's led a lot of the decisions I've made around when to invest in what. And so I've talked a lot about this sort of like build things in small stages, right? And layer on top of the cake. And so by doing that, we're now in our third year. I don't have any debt within the business, and we're able to start reinvesting some of those profits into some of the bigger buckets that were on our not yet list. So one example is sort of the backstory to how I built the lab. I didn't go out and buy a bunch of equipment. I didn't build a facility. I literally built it in my home. And I think initially I thrifted some furniture, and I got a like a countertop from IKEA, and I made a makeshift lab table. And then I bought some beakers from like a local surplus store. And I started with like very little, because at the time I was finishing my degree in organic cosmetic science. I had quit my corporate job to start the brand. And I think I was also planning my wedding at that time. So it was really important that I was scrappy and creative, because I was going to put my own financial risk on the line, as well as the business that hadn't even, been developed yet. And it was too important to me to kind of create a sustainable path where I could start small and then build on top of that. So yeah, I think that's just kind of how I approached it. And I took everything in small chunks, and I was just really smart about where I decided to invest. So about 2 years in, I had enough profit to invest in bringing on a team for a short stint that could help me learn some of like the marketing gaps that I wasn't necessarily the expert in. And so I brought on a team. I worked alongside them. It was like an investment in my own education to kind of learn the ropes and figure out some of these additional digital strategies that I really didn't address in the beginning, because it was not my forte. It was too expensive, and I knew I could make an impact elsewhere. So I think those are just some good examples of how you can make some of those trade-offs with the budget that you do have, so that you don't kind of get over your skis and and fall.
And that's fantastic advice. And I love the story because you are so, like, well, I mean, you are responsible with your budget. and you're not out there getting investors that are going to put pressure on you and completely derail you from your mission and from the strategy that you've created. Because yes, you can bring in investors and, like, boom your business, but what about the pressure? There's so much pressure, and some people, they're okay, they dive into things and they're like, okay, I can take it. Some people are just crazy and they dive into it, and let's see what happens, and it can work and can, fail. But I think what you're building is really solid, and for the people that are, similar to you, that they see in you what they want to do, I think it's a perfect example, and it's really, really good advice that you start small, you thrift your furniture, you do what you have to do. Do not, like, don't risk the quality of the product. If the ingredients, like, you can have, a thrifted furniture, but you can't have, the quality of your product, jeopardized in any way. So I love that you did that, and I so respect what you're doing, so respect it, I love it. So let's talk about, um okay, we talked about the creativity on a budget and what you had to do. We already talked about that, but let's talk about quality over quantity. So the pressure to scale fast and loud, like we just said, is everywhere, right? Um, can you explain how this slow and steady approach is, you talked about this, but how is it more sustainable and how it leads to more loyalty? Because I feel like your customers, they're very loyal to you. Is it because you relate to them, you connect with them one on one? Is it because of, like, how have you built this community? Because today you have a community, it's very sustainable, it's growing solid, you see the numbers going up, right? You're not scaling fast, but you're scaling solid. And the way that you have planned, that's, you're going along with your strategy, with your goals. So tell us how you build this loyalty. I think that's the most difficult part with skincare, is creating loyalty, because of the world of brands that we have. Skincare is so hard, first to make someone change their skincare routine, and also how do you build this loyalty? Because people are always trying different cleansers, different serums, and I feel like you have a following, and it's a following that has been loyal. I am one that became loyal to the products that I use from your brand. So how do you do that, Kacie? Tell us the secret sauce here.
Well, I'm glad the proof is in the pudding, and that you're in the loyal category with Love and Light Botanicals. But yeah, I would love to talk about this a little bit deeper. So I do think, as you kind of mentioned, this idea of scaling fast, or this pressure to kind of grow the brand above and beyond any other metric, is a little bit damaging for a small business, especially when you have a consumer brand, because that really fast growth without a strong foundation will really jeopardize the trust that people have in you. When you make mistakes, they're just going to be magnified, right? And we're all making mistakes, so I'm sure we'll talk about that at some point in this series. But the wellness space shows up in this way, where there's clever messaging, there's hooks, there's all these fear-based promises, and I think these are great ways to get people to try a new product. But I don't believe it's a sustainable way to build a long-term relationship with customers. So that's really where this sort of like building it one customer at a time comes in for me. And I think focusing on the transparency with the ingredients, being intentional about what's behind each formula, and then communicating effectively with people. What can you really realistically expect from our products? And then also, like, being there with them along the journey. I have a personal interaction with almost all of my customers, whether I've met them at an event, or we've talked on social media, or they've booked a consult with me. And I think investing that personal time has gone a really long way, because they have someone right there along with them to navigate the skincare routine. And that was my whole why, right? It was a beauty industry that I couldn't trust. It was confusing. There was a lot of this fear based messaging. So I wanted to stand out and be sort of a beacon in that and help people really solve these problems. And then on top of that, I stand behind all of my products with a happiness guarantee. And honestly, the times when customers need to use that are actually some of the times that I value the most, even though it might mean that the product isn't working out, because I can get insight into what's not working. I can connect with them and help them solve whatever that problem is, even if it's a refund. That's still a really valuable interaction. And I've left an impression that is beyond a transactional experience. And so that's the brand I wanted to build. I wanted to maintain this integrity over. Just this fast paced, moving a bunch of volume. And so I think those are some really important ways to kind of like genuinely create that connection in that community and really focus on building trust.
I think that's really important what you're saying about building trust and how you're so available to your consumers. You're there for to answer questions, you're there for a one-on-one consultation, which is amazing. How many founders, skincare founders, do you see that are available for a one-on-one consultation with their customers? That requires time, dedication, that requires so much effort from a founder. So I truly appreciate it because not everybody has the time. And I know you're very busy because you're wearing a million hats, you're manufacturing your own products, sourcing your own ingredients, making sure your ingredients come from healthy soil, from, ethical suppliers, and still you're finding the time to connect and to answer questions one on one with your clients. So this is huge. And now I see why you're building such a loyal customer base, because people know that they can count on you for any questions, for anything that happens. And the happiness guarantee, I love that. And sometimes people even ask me, like, what is this happiness guarantee that Love and Life Botanicals start? And then they start to get really spiritual and talk about, like, happiness and the meaning of happiness. And I'm like, no, what she means is she wants her customers happy with the service she provided and the products that they're using that she made with love for them. So I think that I understand that your happiness guarantee translates into this, the satisfaction, the customer satisfaction. You want to see them happy with your products, no matter where you have to go above and beyond to make that happen for them. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely. It basically means, if you're not 100% satisfied with any part of the experience, then we'll find a way to make it right.
I love that. Again, I'm saying that. I love that. I want to ask you one last question, and then I will tell people about our next episode, episode 3, because it's going to be a funny one, and it's going to be tragical, and it's going to be comical, but we're going to talk about all the mistakes that, like some of my mistakes starting, some of Casey's mistakes. We're going to go through all that so that people understand that it's okay to make mistakes. And even when you make a mistake that seems like it's the end of the world, there's always a solution. And we're going to show them all the creative solutions we have found in our personal journey in business, and all the things that happen. So that's going to be a really funny, good one. Funny, but at the same time, it's going to give a little bit of, like, we're going to be nervous just remembering the stories, but I think it's going to be amazing. And it's the human part of our business. We make mistakes, we are creative, we're flexible, we fix them in the best way that we can. So tell us about winning on your own terms. So to the founder who is watching and feels like they're behind, what does success look like to you now versus when you started? Like, you feel successful, I'm sure, because you are. So how did you feel in the beginning? Like, what did you feel success was for you? And now that you're 3 years in your business, what does it look like now? How do you feel that you've been successful with everything that you've done so far for Love and Light Botanicals?
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say personally, I love this question because for me, this journey of, starting a business from the ground up has also helped me learn a lot about myself. And I will say I was probably the most self-critical, like first one to, put the doubt in my own mind, less than 3 years ago when I started this. And I think back then I had a pretty naive and narrow definition of success. And of course, it was based on, the numbers. And I expected everything to happen much faster than it actually happens. But one of the most valuable lessons is this importance of social proof, this trust in your customer, right? And that takes time and that's worth investing in. So, what has become one of my personal biggest measures of success is the loyalty of my customers. And when I see a customer returning, it's not about like the immediate gratification or getting the sale in the moment or even like the conversion metrics. Um, because getting someone to change their routine, especially when it involves skincare, is genuinely hard. It's a very intimate part of our everyday, and it takes a lot of trust for someone, to venture out and put my products on their skin. So when they come back because they love the experience, to me that's the best measure of success. And I know that might sound small, but it's so gratifying because the success was never entirely defined for me by revenue. Obviously, I have to keep growing the business to keep the lights on, but it was about making a difference. And how you go about that matters. How you're impacting the way someone's skin feels, how excited they are to have found something that finally works. Or even, like I mentioned before, when it isn't working, being the kind of brand that helps them troubleshoot or, ultimately make it right without hesitation and building that integrity, that reputation around the brand is what truly matters. And to me, that level of integrity is a huge measure of success, making a positive difference, even if it's one customer at a time. So I think that's probably my biggest barometer to success, and probably will be for the foreseeable future.
You just defined what a mission-driven founder is. We are motivated by passion. We are motivated by results, by how we impact people, the planet, everyone around us. And it's really interesting because we see a lot of people focusing on revenue from day one, and then they don't understand that they get lost, their passion gets lost in focusing on the revenue, and the revenue is a consequence of all the work that you did during your journey. So the revenue will come, even if it doesn't look like it will come, it will. And it's really a consequence, and that's not what defines success. What defines success is what you said. It's the loyalty, it's the community you've built, it's the difference you've made, it's the ripple effect that is happening. And once the revenue starts reflecting that, it's just a continuous solid growth. It's very hard to like you know destroy that growth that has been built in such a solid way, because it's the connection with the person. It's not just the numbers. And people go by data that sometimes is not accurate. I was talking to my friend yesterday, and she said she was looking, she's going on a trip, and she was looking at something about Paris and France, and she wasn't looking for sightseeing or anything like that. She was just looking for an itinerary that she was doing. And she started getting bombarded on social media with museums in Paris and sightseeing in Paris. And she's like, I love how the retargeting and the social media like follows you around, but that's not what I want. So today it's really important to know what your customer wants, why they want that, and not just, oh, here we are. We just we looked Paris, so let's assume that it's so. There's a lot of mistakes going on sometimes in technology, because you just go through the data in a way that you're not humanizing that data. So it's really important. And I love what you're doing. I love how loyal your customers are because of the dedication you put into your work, and your customers. You know, they feel how loving and passionate you are about the work you do and about them being happy with using your products. So thank you so much, Kacie. This was so incredibly encouraging. You are proving that you don't need a corporate budget to have a massive impact. And I really can't wait for episode 3, because we are going to laugh, maybe cry a little bit too, but it's going to be so fun to just remember all the crazy mistakes we've made, and you know what we thought then, what we think now, and how we fixed all of that. So I'm so excited. I hope you're excited too for episode 3.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for making space for this conversation today. And yeah, I can't wait to commiserate alongside you in episode 3.
It's going to be amazing. And to everyone watching, remember that every choice we make can shape the future. So let's choose wisely, live intentionally, and support those who are making a difference. So stay inspired, stay motivated, and let's keep building a brighter future together. Thank you, Kacie. Oh my gosh, this was so fun.